advice I would give to my younger self: if you make someone angry, try walking a mile in their shoes. They'll still be angry, but you'll be a mile away and they'll have no shoes.
It's the Call Kevin podcast. It's the podcast of your dreams. It's the Call Kevin podcast. Don't ask him things. Podcast Kevin with Call Kevin.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Call Kevin. It's my weekly call-in show where you go to my website, kevinjamesthornton.com, press the record button, and leave a question, tell us a story, whatever you want to say, to possibly be used on a future episode of Call Kevin. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see that I am set up on an ironing board in a hotel room in Detroit, Michigan. I'm here for a show this evening, so we're on the road. That's why things look a little strange. The ironing board was the only flat surface at this height that I could put in front of the window. So this is what we're doing. You might have heard at the very top there a joke about something you would say to your younger self, and that's a prompt I put out to everyone this week. That's what most of our messages are about this week. There's a couple that are off the beaten path, but that's mainly what we're talking about. Before we dive in, I want to let you know that this Wednesday night, I'll be at the Mic Drop Comedy Club in San Diego. On Thursday night, I'll be at the Tempe Improv in Tempe, Arizona. And then coming up, I have a whole bunch of stuff all over the West Coast. On June 1st, I'll be in Portland, Oregon, then Eugene, Oregon, Tacoma, Washington, a whole bunch of stuff in Orange County and the surrounding LA area. I don't have an LA date at the moment, and maybe it's not going to happen this year. I'm not sure. But there's a whole bunch of stuff around LA if you want to take a little drive. And if you live in LA, I know that you do not. Sorry, I needed to take a water break. I was already parched, and we just got started. I'm so excited to dive in. Let's see, what do we have here?
You are listening to the Call Kevin podcast.
Hi, Kevin. I'm calling in because I love the podcast. My name is Elle. I'm from New Jersey, and I kept coming back to the grandma pervert idea that you mentioned. So I am a mom. My oldest is only 7, and then I have a 4-year-old and an almost 3-year-old, and I'm also a teacher, so I spend a lot of time with children. I teach teenagers. They're very young, though. Very young teenagers. Anyway, I'm calling because you refer to yourself as a pervert in how you would talk to your grandma and, ask if that's normal. And I just want to say, as with the experience that I have with children and kids, it's 100% normal. If anything, it shows me that you loved your grandma and your grandma loved you and you felt very safe with her to say those wacky things do your quote unquote pervert thoughts and everything. That's just a sign that you were safe with your grandma. And I think that's beautiful. Shamalahama.
Some of you know that I just finished writing my book, and I had to make a decision because I have so many stories of when I was a kid. I was so fascinated by naked people and things like that. No, it's not even sexual stuff. I was a super curious kid, but from a gay viewpoint, even when I was little. And those stories jump out at me because they're very funny, I think. And I had to make a choice because, God, we live in this world now where people are so on edge about sexuality and how we're trying to indoctrinate each other. And I'm just out here trying to be myself. And I'm remembering these stories about when I was a kid. And I was like, God, I hope this doesn't get taken the wrong way. And I was like, you know what? Fuck it. This is my experience. These are my memories. And I joke about what a pervert I was when I was a kid, but I mean that jokingly. I don't really think, I think you all know that, but I'm using that word as a joke. I think I was just a normal kid. I don't spend time around children. I'm not like a kid guy. But for those of you who are, and what this caller was just saying, I would imagine that's just how kids are, I think. Mine was just maybe a little weirder because I was a homosexual. I was a homosexual 12-year-old. It's time for another water sip. I'm sorry, you guys. I'm not even thirsty. It's just here, and it's so refreshing. It's carbonated.
So I was just listening to one of your recent podcasts, and by the way, hello, my name's Kathy.
Hello, Kathy.
Big fan. Second message I've left for you. There was a lady speaking about the word hell being in a hymn, and she was singing, and made me remember a little bit of my fundamentalist upbringing when it comes to cuss words. And my parents were pretty strict about things like that, and my dad was pretty techie. So whenever we would buy movies or VHS tapes or cassette tapes or anything like that, he would edit them if there were cuss words. And I remember one in particular thing he did. He bought the album Thriller because he was a Michael Jackson fan, and yeah, wholesome back then, at least until he started grabbing his crotch. Then we weren't allowed to watch him anymore. But I remember one particular verse of the Thriller song. If you remember, Vincent Price was spoke in the middle of it, and he said something about the hounds of hell. And I remember my dad editing that, and to where it wouldn't say the word hell, so you would just hear the hounds of, and then silence, because that was such a terrible word. Pretty funny, but these days, when it's on the radio or I hear it, and I'm thinking, oh, this is not the edited version. I shouldn't be listening. And then my dad's going to roll over in his grave. Dad, I listened to Vincent Price say hell. Yeah, but that's one funny thing about my upbringing. Just thought I would tell my story. Love you, by the way. Been a fan for a long time.
You know, that's a little crazy because I was just thinking to scour through an entire movie to blank out the cuss words, especially on like 1980s technology, like with the VCR. That was super time consuming. That's a little crazy. He would scour through the movies to bleep out the cuss words. My God. You know, the 80s were a different time, weren't they? We had a lot more time on our hands. Thriller is the very first album I bought with my own money. I had a little bit of cash, I don't remember how, and I bought the Thriller album. I feel like I might have been pressured by my dad a little bit because I think he wanted the Thriller album. And he was like, "Oh, this is a great purchase." I mean, I love that album. But I remember bringing it home and my dad playing it and then calling everyone to tell them what an amazing album it was. Did my dad trick me into buying Thriller? And then shortly after that, I discovered the Columbia House 7 free cassettes. And I ordered, this is a little bit later, I guess. Thriller was on vinyl. And then maybe a couple years later, I remember most of them. I got Whitney Houston, Greatest Love of All, Billy Idol, Whiplash Smile, Janet Jackson, Control, Patti Smith, not like poetic Robert Mapplethorpe Patti Smith, but there was another Patti Smythe, maybe is that how you said it? The one hit they had was something on the walls of heartache, bang, bang, I am the warrior. You remember that song? That was one of the tapes. And then Fleetwood Mac, Tango in the Night. What year was that album? I don't have the capabilities of looking it up. I was almost like, will you look up Fleetwood Mac, Tango in the Night, as if I have a producer off camera? But I don't. It's just me in my hotel room in Detroit, Michigan. What albums did you get on the 7 free cassettes from Columbia House?
Hi, Kev.
Hi.
This is Miss Lisa Renee. And what I would tell my younger self is, hey, older self, tried not to sweat the small stuff, but learned it too late in life. So younger self, If people are showing you their true colors of BS, believe the true colors and move on. Don't challenge them, just move on. And second of all, always speak your truth. Never hide your truth for the acceptance of others.
You know, as I always sort of lightly preview all the calls before I record the show, just so I have some idea of what's coming. And as I was listening through these last night, a lot of these calls about what you would tell your younger self, I had this thought, and I didn't fully flesh it out. Maybe I'll be able to define it clearer as we're listening right now. But a lot of these calls are similar, even though they're different. And they all have something to do with, you know, when you're young, you don't know who you are yet. And that like manifests itself in a lot of different ways. Like you don't really know how you should be treated. You don't really know yet that you can tell people no. You don't really realize yet that you can demand respect. You know, and it's a thing as you get older and you go around the block a few times. You put up with less shit. And it's not scary to tell people no or put up with less shit. They all have something to do with that. They're all kind of like that, all these calls. I was thinking how I am learning a new lesson in saying no. And if I could just talk about my little art studio space, Shamala Hamala, again for a moment. If you've been listening, you know I'm about to open an art studio in my neighborhood. It's called Shamala Hamala. And I love putting ideas out there, especially with, you know, that I have this public platform, asking people's ideas and for input. I like to involve people. I've always been like that, even though I'm ultimately going to do what I feel is best. But I love hearing what people think. I love collaboration like that. And with this idea, so many people have been excited and they've written me and had ideas to contribute and different things. And I'm very much of the, you know, in the improv world, there's the rule, yes, and. Have you heard this before? When you're doing an improv scene and someone says something in the scene improvisationally, you say yes, and. You never like say no. You always say yes. And in collaboration, I love saying yes. When I hear ideas, I'm always like, yes, that's great. Let's keep doing it until it doesn't work anymore. So as people are writing in, I'm like, yes, yes, yes. Give me your ideas. Yes, I love that. And it's gotten to a point now. I'm about a month away from getting the keys to the place, and I've been working on a business plan and coming up with plans and ideas. But I've included everyone's yes so much that I've sort of lost myself a little bit. I'm sort of learning a more subtle, layer of when to say no and when to say yes too. But, one of my first visions for this place was to have a photographic dark room, which has been a long dream of mine. I have a lot of ideas for that. But so many people's ideas were coming into the space, and I almost got to the point where I almost cut the dark room out of the vision so that I had enough storage space for all the ideas. You know what I mean? Like everyone's ideas kind of added a new piece of equipment or more folding chairs. And so eventually I was like, well, God, for this space to hold all this, I need a big storage closet. And I guess that's going to be where the dark room is going to go. So I have room for all these ideas. And I was like, I had a moment recently. I was like, wait a minute, you're about to cut your part of the dream out of it for more storage space. It's time to say no a little bit. It's time to say no a little more. I have more to say about that, but I don't want to monopolize my whole show.
Hi, Kevin.
Hi.
My name is Susie. Love you. Big fan. Lots of love from Denver. The only advice that I would give myself is to quit smoking. Now, cigarettes, vaping, all of it's bullshit and will ruin your life in the end because by the time you've hit rock bottom, it's far too late. I was pretty big dipshit growing up, and my life still turned out exactly the way I'd hoped. But the quitting smoking thing is something I battled for a long time. It took me 3 times to finally quit and many years Fingers crossed I don't get cancer.
I also feel like that too, that I was a dipshit when I was a kid. Sometimes I think about the things I did and the things I said. Why was I like that? I'm glad I grew up. Some of you also know that I was a fully committed smoker all through the 90s, spilled over a little bit into the early 2000s, and then I finally quit. It was one of the hardest things I had to do as well. I tried all the things, the patches, the gums, all the gums. And the thing that finally worked for me, someone gave me this book called, I don't know if I'm going to mess the title up, but the title was something like How to Stop Smoking the Easy Way. And by this point, I had tried 4 or 5 times and failed. I was addicted to cigarettes. And this book finally flipped the switch. And it was kind of easy in a weird way. I was ready to quit, though. I really, really wanted to quit. Don't smoke, kids.
This is Callie Casburn.
Hi.
Recording a message to my younger self. And my message is to stop overthinking it. And that you know your best friend, that best friend, yes, he's going to stick around when no one else does. He's going to be the best friend. And yes, you will be an artist and actually get paid for it. And you won't be rich, of course, but you will be loved more than you can even imagine at this point in your life. And girl, it's gonna be so good.
If you need help, hang up and then dial your operator. Thank you.
Every week in the space where I might include some commercials for a sponsor, we don't have those on this show yet. I'm shouting out your ideas, your businesses, whatever it is you're working on. If you would like me to shout out your business or your Substack or whatever it is, you can message me on Substack, or you can send me an email at... What email do I want you to use? kevinjamesthornton@gmail.com. Here we go this week. The Natural Bookkeeper offers remote services to small business owners and entrepreneurs that need a helping hand. I provide peace of mind by categorizing all transactions, managing AR and AP, sending monthly financial reports, basic payroll, and monthly reconciliation. My multi-talents include adopting to any financial software, not just QuickBooks. Open to anyone in the U.S. The website is thenaturalbookkeeper.com. If that's of interest to anyone. Oh, also, again, these are not, these businesses that I shout out in this segment, these are not necessarily endorsed by me. I don't know anything about them. I'm shouting out what you send me. So if you decide to contact these people, you're on your own. I don't know anything about them. It's like a community bulletin board at Starbucks. A coworker of mine created the following nonprofit following the loss of her son, Isaac, to neuroblastoma, and is going through the process of having her Facebook page restored. Due to this, she's having a hard time with visibility and could use the community's help. The Isaac Strong Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization based in Rock County, Wisconsin. The foundation was founded in loving memory of Isaac, a vibrant and courageous boy who battled neuroblastoma. Diagnosed at just 2 years old, Isaac was a ray of sunshine who touched countless lives with his light and bravery. After gaining his angel wings in June 2020, the foundation was created to honor his legacy and provide support to families navigating the challenges of childhood cancer. Oh, I don't have contact info on this one. It's called the Isaac Strong Foundation. I guess you could look it up if you wanted to find it. They didn't give me a link on that one. And then lastly, here we have... maybe you need help with your next step in life. You're not sure about your job situation, you want to repair a broken relationship, or you just need help communicating with a friend, partner, parent, or child. You're trying to get started, but you don't know where to begin. But you say, I'm a fully functioning adult. I can figure out this on my own. I agree with you, friend. And also, how much time have you lost fretting over this issue? How much joy have you avoided by thinking and stewing on what could be or what to do next? Helping others through these kinds of situations and being through them myself is why I started Journey Onward Coaching. Journey Onward Coaching offers coaching and individual or group mediation services. I am a certified life coach and trained transformative mediator. My goal is to help you take your next steps so you can get your life back. Go to journeyon.wordcoaching.com to learn more and sign up for a free consultation to find out if this is right for you. If you're ready to get started, fill out the mediation or coaching form. For Kevin's listeners only, use the coupon code KEVIN for 50% off your mediation session or 25% off your coaching package. You can email questions to journeyon.wordcoaching@gmail.com. And I guess lastly, I'll plug my own thing, which is, of course, the Shamala Hamala studio I'm opening up in my neighborhood of Over the Rhine in Cincinnati, Ohio. But even if you don't live in my neighborhood, you can still enjoy the fruits of the Shamala Hamala. It's a work in progress, like you heard me talk about a little earlier. It's my private studio space, but I have a lot of ideas of things I want to make that involve you. My whole concept is connecting people through art. And you don't even have to be a talented, great artist. I am talking about participating and creating fun things, creating things together. I always feel very relaxed and enjoying life when I'm making something, when I'm painting, when I'm working on photography. It can be a lot of things. Maybe for you, it's baking or crocheting. So this space is going to have lots of projects that you can watch online if you don't live in my neighborhood. There's going to be some classes, and it's all about participation and connecting to each other through creativity. If that sounds cool to you, I have a brand new website set up. It's shamalahamala.com. I am accepting donations, but only small donations. I don't want large contributions from anyone. It's the power of a whole bunch of people joining together to create something cool. Information, if you want to read more about it, or if you want to throw $5 toward the Shamala, go to shamalahamala.com and check it out.
Hello, Kevin. This is Doretha with Be Well with D, and I am delighted to give some of my own personal wisdom as it relates to how what advice I would give my younger self. And the advice that I would give is to always be patient with yourself, no matter what phase of life that you're in, whether it be younger self or your full on adult self, is to always be patient with who you are and where you are in your journey. And so I like to think that our lives are split into threes or one thirds. So the first part of that third of our lives is that we receive wisdom. We receive teaching and knowledge from all of those around us, because of course we come into to this world and there's no manual, there's no anything. So we rely on those around us to teach us how to speak, how to eat, how to be. And a lot of times that may not be in the fullest alignment of who we are or why we chose to come onto this earth. And so that first part going through adolescence is people dumping their beliefs, their practices upon us. But that second part, that second phase, when we discover who we are and we've taken note of people around us and maybe had a desire to be those people or to do what those people do, because sometimes we have an identity crisis or not knowing exactly who we are, depending upon who planted seeds within us in that first phase. But that second phase is for us to shed who we are not. And sometimes that can be very painful to release a lot of the trauma that people have poured into our vessel. So that second part, which usually is in our 20s and early 30s, of shedding those things, get rid of it. We don't need it because it doesn't align with us. That third part is we've become. We've shed those things. We know who we are. We've taken that mask off and we can spread our wings as the butterfly and proceed into that third part of our lives, that Holy Trinity, that person that walks with our head high and full of love and light. So I hope that's a blessing to you and also your audience. And thank you for this opportunity. I love your content.
I like the way you laid that out, and that is my experience too. I mean, if you know my story, boy, did I have how life is supposed to be thrusted upon me in my youth. And boy, did I shake it off in my 20s and 30s. My 30s were sad. And I think, I had a lot to unravel and a lot to unpack. And I burst out of my hometown with something to prove. And I kept not doing a very good job at proving to myself that I was worth something. Like all through my 30s, as each year passed, I felt like I was a loser, that I didn't have what I thought I did. And on my 40th birthday, I'm always hesitant to use this word because I always I know that I've been blessed and privileged through my life, and people have had it a lot worse than me. But on my 40th birthday, I was homeless. I was living in a super crappy Chevy Beretta. All my belongings were in the trunk. That car broke down all the time. And all through my youth, I had the age of 40 as like the age that I had to have my shit together. In my mind, like that was the age when I was like fully grown and my dreams will have been realized and I'd have a ton of money in the bank. And I had none of that. I was broke. I lived in a car at 40 years old. And it's almost like in some weird way, I sort of had to become the man I feared I would become. It was like a self-fulfilled prophecy or something. It's like I always knew it was coming and I had to just go ahead and get it out of the way. 40 years old, broke, failure, living in a car. And then little by little, I started to piece something else back together. Maybe my path is a little bit different than everyone else's, or maybe it's not. Maybe it's the same. I just kind of did it in a different way. In my 40s, I put it all back together little by little. Got myself together. Started dating a wonderful person who I was with for 10 years and really stabilized my life and settled down a lot of things in my heart. And now I'm 52 years old, talking to you from a hotel room in Detroit, Michigan. But things are good, you guys. My dreams came true at 50. It happens.
You poor, closeted Mormon basket case. There isn't enough cookie dough in the world. Just love yourself, for Christ's sakes. And, throw in a salad once in a while or something. Jesus.
I would say, younger self, lighten the fuck up. Go take some gummies and roll in some finger paint all day with your kids. Period.
Hi, Kevin. Big fan. The advice that I would give to my younger self is just to know that you're not that fat, but you are going to get fatter. So take those pictures now, save them, cherish them, upload them to the cloud, because, it could always be worse.
I would
Okay,
tell
love you.
my younger
Bye.
self being, quote, perfect won't make them love you or even like you. So just be yourself.
Hey Kevin, it's Kristen here. I just wanted to record this message and let you know that if I could tell my younger self something, I would tell her nobody's watching you. I spent so much time and energy on thinking how others were perceiving me, and what I realize now is that everyone else was so caught up in thinking that same thought.
I would tell younger me don't date boys with long hair in bands. I would also tell me not to marry a man 12 years older than me and like to do better because girl, your taste was trash. Wait until you're 25 to be in a committed relationship because yikes, before that, questionable, all of them.
If you'd like to make a call, please hang up and try again.
Hi, Kevin. This is Josh Williams from Seattle, Washington. I'm calling to leave a message regarding advice that I would tell my younger self, and that is that to listen to people who give advice, listen to old people. Every time somebody's on their deathbed and they're asked, what do they regret or what do they wish they would have done different, they always say, I wish I would have spent more time with my kids, or I wish I would have spent more time developing relationships. And they never say, I wish I would have spent more time at work. And this advice is as old as time. We've heard this since we were kids. We hear it now. And my advice would be to actually heed that advice. I've gotten myself in a position where I own my own remodel company, and I'm able to work for a couple weeks, and those couple weeks usually finance 2 or 3 months worth of living. And if I work a month or 2 or 3 in a row, then I can afford to take a month or 2 off. And so I have lots and lots of time to do what I want, to do what I know I'm going to wish I would have done if I hit 80 years old and look back and somebody asked me what I wish I would have done. I'm doing it now. That would be my advice.
Yeah, the thing that occurred to me as I have been listening to these messages is, and I said this at the beginning, how similar they all are. Even though we're all different, we've all had different experiences and taken different paths. But at the essence, it's all the same, isn't it? Like I said, when you're young, you don't really know yet. You feel like you need permission. You feel like you need approval. If someone treats you badly, you think maybe you deserved it. Or you don't know how to stand up for yourself. You're sort of waiting with like fear and hesitancy. And then when we get a certain age, we sort of look back and go, no, you don't need to do any of that. Like none of that mattered. All the things you were worried about back then don't even exist anymore. So you're just free. You're just free to be. Like that's a thing that happens at some point to most people. I mean, some people hold on to things and they never really get over it or whatever. But I think in general, we all sort of come to some version of that. Like stop worrying. Like all those little things you were concerned about, they're gone. It doesn't matter. Live your life. And then as this person is saying, we all know the stories about someone at the end of their life, what they might say at the very end. And, we all know it's those things people look back and it's the simple things of just, I wish I would have spent time with people I loved. I wish I would have said, I wish I would have told them I loved them. I wish I had not gotten so wrapped up in work. And we know these things. We still have to learn our lessons, don't we? It takes a lot of, I think, insight and clarity to really be able, like this person saying, they are really trying to heed that idea of at some point you're going to be at the end, and what do you wish you had done and not done? It's probably not going to be worked more hours, And you have to work hours, right? It's not an easy answer thing. But so much in life comes down to these sort of cliches. And they're cliches because they're so true. They're so incredibly true, so they become cliche. And it's like, a lot of times I think the advice you'd want to say to your younger self couldn't hear it, wouldn't be able to hear it. Because, for me, I would want to be like, hey, stop worrying about Jesus and go sit down by the river and watch the sunset. Because that's beautiful and it's human, and all the things you're all tied up in a knot about today do not matter. Go watch the sunset. Go hang out with a friend. Go make a nice meal and laugh with somebody. That's all there is. You know, when you're young, I think you'd be like, yeah, I get it. Okay, yeah, the best things in life are free, blah, blah, blah. I've got shit to do. And that's like the human experience. It's like you learn the lessons and then it's too late. And you wish you had sat watching the sunset with a friend more often.
So you asked on Instagram what advice you'd give your younger self. And I think the best thing I could ever tell myself is not to go to bed angry. Because going to bed angry sets you up for poor sleep and a terrible day the next day. Because you're still thinking about everything that went wrong the day before. So don't go to bed angry. Find something that brings you even the slightest bit of joy right before bed, so you can rest your head well and get a good night's rest and start the next day beautifully.
I just remembered a thing I wanted to continue about learning to say no. Sorry, this just popped in my head and I want to say it before I forget it. Another thing I realized about myself this week. Some of you know that along with my Shamala Hamala studio, there's been this idea of a Sunday community gathering. And I made a post about this maybe a month ago, and a whole bunch of people reached out. And if you didn't see it, it's basically this. For those of us who grew up in some sort of church setting, and then if you don't have that in your life today, a common thing that people say is they miss the built-in community of that weekly Sunday gathering. They miss the weekly socialization of showing up to a place and talking to your neighbors and making some friends and maybe going to dinner with someone. That's built into the church world. And you lose that if you leave the church world. On this show, people have called in and said it's hard to make friends. It's hard to meet new people. But if you're involved in some sort of church society, all that stuff is built in. And that's the thing I hear a lot of people say they miss that the most. Of all the things they wish they could get back, it would be some sort of built-in socialization, some sort of built-in community. So I floated this idea of what if at Shamala Hamala, one of the things we did was this weekly Sunday, not religious. It's just it's a gathering of people. Maybe we'll have an interesting speaker. It'll be short, and then we'll break and go to Red Lobster. No, and a lot of people responded to that. They're like, yes, that's the thing I miss. Please do that. And so I started turning those wheels and exploring, and then I actually now do have a space in my neighborhood. My studio is not big enough to house it, really, but I found a nearby theater who's willing to host it, and I've turned some wheels on it, and then this is another thing about me learning about myself and when to say yes and when to say no. I realized, first I looked at my calendar and I was like, oh, I'm actually, for this year, I'm not home on a whole lot of Sundays. I'm on the road a lot. I didn't realize how many Sundays I'm gone. I'm like, well, this needs to be a consistent thing. And I knew from the beginning that I didn't necessarily want to be the leader of it. Am I going on about something boring right now? I hope I'm not. Anyway, I was like, oh, well, I don't really want to be the leader anyway. I was just going to help get it started. I was going to drive the bus, so to speak. A lot of people seem excited. And this is the thing I know about myself. I've always been a really good bus driver. People throughout my life have liked often to gather around me. I've always been a good bus driver. Does that make sense? And I get excited when people want to get on the bus. And with this church idea, it's not church, but non-religious church, a lot of people wanted to get on the bus and I'm the bus driver. And my first thing was oh, I'm not really here on Sundays. Someone else needs to take this. And then also realized, if I'm being truthful, I'm not really personally passionate about this idea. I'm just a really good bus driver. And I do this a lot in my life, where I say yes to driving the bus and I don't really consider my own feelings or emotions. I'm only really considering the emotions of the people around me, which can be a strength. And it can also just put me in the position of bus driver about something I'm not super passionate about. I've put myself in that position so many times in my life. That's my point here. I hope that wasn't a really long-winded way to say I'm learning about myself and just being honest about saying no I can still help the Sunday gathering come together, but someone else has to be the bus driver. I'm not the bus driver for this project. All that to say, does anyone want to drive the Sunday gathering bus in Cincinnati, Ohio? And there's going to be an online element too. Like if you're not in Cincinnati with a lot of the Shamala Hamala ideas, I need a bus driver for the Sunday gathering idea because it's not me. You know what? This is a good time for a dance break.
Dance break in your car, in your office, where you are. Dance break, move your booty, break it down like it's your duty. Dance break. Dance break.
Do you remember in the 90s?
It was the 90s.
When people would make that noise at dance clubs. Ooh, ooh. What is that from? Do you remember that? I'm going to bring that back. I enjoyed the ooh, ooh.
If you'd like to make a call, please hang up and try again.
I would tell younger me, don't date boys with long hair in bands.
Oh, wait, we listened to that one already. It was about older men. What are your guys' rules for age differences in dating? How old is too old? How young is too young? For myself, I generally say 10 years in either direction. But that only kind of works when you're in midlife and beyond. You know, I mean, obviously when you're 20, you can't say 10 years in either direction. That would be bad. But do you have rules for ages? I'm looking what is left here. Oh, yes, here we go.
Hi, Kevin. It's Jill from your beloved Cincinnati. I read in your Secret Sunday message this week asking where we find hope. And it just so happened that I read that after doing one of the most hopeful things I do each year. I plant a vegetable garden. It's such a practice of hope for me because it starts in the dead of winter when you feel like it's not going to be light past 6 p.m. That's when I start thinking about and starting seeds and thinking about when it'll be nice out again. It's just a moment that says, here's where I am today, and soon it'll be different. It's about creating and practicing as my ancestors did. Though if I had to rely on what I grow, it might be more stressful than hopeful. But for me, gardening is a reminder that the seasons continue. No matter what the current weather is, I can do as much as I can, but I can't control everything. It's what I've turned to in my darkest times, putting my hands in the dirt, starting seeds. And this weekend, especially with all that is happening in our country, it's again a reminder that in a few months, things will look different. What that different will be, we don't know yet. Thanks. I love your work.
In my book that I am finishing up, I went to a place I didn't expect, really. The first half of the book takes place in the 90s. You are probably not surprised to learn.
It was the 90s.
And then the second half is current day. And the second half of this book, it sort of uncovered things that are happening in real time inside me. And there's no like super clean, tidy ending. It's a little messy, like life. But there's this section where I talk about how I was trying to start a garden. When I moved in with the person that I was with for 10 years that ended a couple years ago, in his backyard, there was a little plot of land. I've never really had a home before at that point. Like I just told you, I was living in a car when I met him. Actually, I was living in my friend's spare bedroom, but barely out of the Chevy Beretta. And I ended up moving in with him. He had a condo. And in the backyard, there was a little plot of land. And it was he never went back there, so it was pretty overgrown with weeds and stuff. But I saw it, and I was like, I'm going to manicure that backyard, and I'm going to plant things. This is my home now. And I'm going to put a garden back there. And I got back there, and it was so much work. The ground was in bad shape. I mean, it was full of roots and weeds that had gone deep. And it was sort of like construction soil anyway. It wasn't good soil. It was the backyard of a condominium complex. So it was all rocky and there were tons of just roots and it was in bad shape. But I tried to dig it up as best I could and I didn't do a great job because I'm not good at that sort of thing. I'm not good at sweating and having dirt on my hands, but I was trying. And I got it fairly under control. And then I got some seeds and some tomato plants and I planted things. And my partner at the time commented that it sort of looked like a fresh grave that I had created back there. There were all these like landscaping stones and I sort of put them in a square around the garden. It looked like someone was buried back there. And that first year it didn't work. Nothing really grew. And the second year I tried again and the weeds came back and the vines came back and I went back there and tore it all down again and tried to replant a garden and it still didn't really work. And then the third year, as you will read in the book, that relationship, we had a couple wonderful years. And then little by little, it started to fade. Like that happens to people. And the third year, I tried one more time. And my mom had given me these sunflower seeds. So I just planted a ton of sunflower seeds. And those sunflowers came up like crazy. They were huge and beautiful, and they stretched like 9 feet into the sky. And I remember it was the year there was an eclipse in the middle of the day. And he was at work, but I was at home. And I didn't have any of those eclipse glasses. And I walked out into my backyard, and there were just like 30 huge sunflowers in my little tiny condominium backyard. And the eclipse started and I couldn't look straight at it because I didn't have the glasses. So I just looked at my sunflowers. And the light turned into that like weird green, like that weird blue green in the middle of the day when that happens during an eclipse. And my neighbors, I could hear them and they were having a little cookout and they were drunk. And at the height of the eclipse, one of them yelled, "I love America," during the eclipse. Like drunkenly yelled, "I love America." And I'm staring at my sunflowers in the middle of the eclipse. It's a weird memory. I don't exactly know where I was going with that, but anyway.
I immediately thought about the relationship I was in from when I was 15 years old to when I was 26 years old. My boyfriend was a lovely person, a really sweet man who I was truly in love with and adored for many years. He was the person he was actually the only person that told me that I was smart when I was in high school. If it wasn't for him, I would never have gone to college. And he was my emotional support throughout much of my adolescent years. But I knew from probably my late teen years that we had different paths and we had been growing apart for many years. But it had never been taught to me. It had never occurred to me. I had never seen a situation where you had a partner who was perfectly sweet and perfectly good and kind to you, who you wanted to leave anyway, where it was okay to leave someone even though they weren't abusive, basically. The default position was always that it's best to be with someone than to be alone. And then I found the amazing and inspiring Dear Sugar column by one of my favorite authors, Cheryl Strayed. She wrote an incredible literary advice column in the late 2000s to early 2010s. And the piece that I want to quote is called The Truth That Lives There. Here are some highlights from that piece that set me on the next path. She writes to a group of women who had written to her about whether they should stay or whether they should go. And her response is talking about her divorce from her first husband when she was 20 years old. She says, "There was in me an awful thing from almost the very beginning, a tiny, clear voice that would not No matter what I did, stop saying go. Go even though you love him. Go even though he's kind and faithful and dear to you. Go even though he's your best friend and you're his. Go even though you can't imagine life without him. Go even though he adores you and your leaving him will devastate him. Go even though your friends will be disappointed or surprised or pissed off or all three. Go even though you once said you would stay. Go even though you're afraid of being alone. Go even though you're not sure, even though you are sure no one will ever love you as much as he does. Go even though there's nowhere to go. Go even though you don't exactly know why you can't stay. Go because you want to. Go because wanting to leave is enough. Go because wanting to leave is enough is a phrase that lodged itself inside me.
Yeah,
And
wow.
that phrase is what convinced me that my wants were valid and ultimately weren't ever going to change. Dear Sugar continues to say, I didn't want to stay with my ex-husband, not at my core, even though whole swaths of me did. And if there's one thing I believe more than I believe anything else, it's that you can't fake the core. The truth that lives there will eventually live out. It's a God we must obey, a force that brings us all inevitably to our knees, and because of it, I can only ask one question. Will you do it later, or will you do it now? I cried for so many weeks when I realized the truth of what Cheryl Strayed was writing. But as soon as I ultimately did make that decision and voiced it to my partner at the time, I was free. And I've never regretted the decision.
You are listening to the Call Kevin podcast.
Back in 2004, I dove into a swimming hole and hit my head on some rocks and broke my neck and became a quadriplegic. And I was pulled out of the water by a friend and life-flighted. And anyway, needless to say, I'm now in a wheelchair and can't move from my chest down. And it took me over 10 years to get up the balls to go back to that swimming hole. And you know, my husband made a really good point that it's not the same water, that it's different water, but it's still the same spot. It holds such an important role in my life. That spot does, that place where my life changed in a heartbeat. From one breath to the next, my entire life became different. And I guess, you know, we all have those moments, those defining moments. Mine happened to be incredibly visceral and incredibly physical and incredibly traumatic. But I'm still here. And I raised my kids and I'm still working. I lived my life. I've directed shows. I've been on the stage performing, which I never thought I'd be able to do again. And I went back to that spot, and it was so good for me to see that spot. And it didn't hurt like I thought it would. And I had carried the anxiety of revisiting that place with me for so long that I had made it up to be really honestly a bigger thing than it was. So it was really good for me to just go and look at the water going by and remember that it's not the same water that did this to me. It's not the same water that changed my life. And it just kind of flowed away, and so much pain flowed away with it.
It was the 90s. It was the 90s. It was the 90s. It was the 90s. It was the 90s.